If he wants to win, Donald Trump must win the key swing state of Pennsylvania. What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back again with a new video, and today we have to talk about the 2024 presidential election because the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is a must-win state, and I know that seems very obvious. Like, of course, a swing state like Pennsylvania, it's critical for both campaigns. Obviously, what's so shocking about that? Well, I don't think some people understand how truly important Pennsylvania is, especially for the Trump campaign. Because I really believe if Trump suffers a defeat in Pennsylvania, his pathway to the presidency is all but gone. And I know that sounds crazy on paper, like, well, okay, Pennsylvania's worth 19 electoral votes, the most of any swing state. And yeah, it would hurt if Trump were to lose Pennsylvania, but it's not the end of the world. Like, okay, Harris at 244. But Trump still has many pathways to winning. I get that. But the more you look at Pennsylvania, the more you realize it's gonna be the tipping point state, more than likely. It's gonna be the state that if Trump wins it, he's probably gonna win the presidency. If Harris wins it, yeah, there's a pathway for Trump, not through Pennsylvania, but without the Commonwealth, it becomes very difficult. That's why Pennsylvania, in my opinion, is the must-win state of the cycle. You know how every election there's a must-win state? Like, it used to be Florida, Ohio, even for a little bit there was Virginia. But now, I believe it's Pennsylvania, more so than even Georgia, because if you lose Georgia, especially if you're Trump, like, yeah, it sucks, but it's not as important regionally and demographically as Pennsylvania. Now, I want to be clear that I am not saying there is no pathway for Trump if he loses Pennsylvania. Like, if he loses it, yeah, of course, there are many pathways for Trump here. We did a whole video on this. The problem is, if Pennsylvania goes Democrat, do you really believe Michigan's going to vote Republican? I know there's a weird scenario where, demographically speaking, maybe Michigan votes the right of Pennsylvania. I guess that's a possibility, but I highly doubt that's going to happen. And at that point, you cannot afford to lose a single state if you're Trump, outside of, like, Nevada. Like, you can afford to lose Nevada and, of course, Nebraska second, but outside of that, you cannot lose a single state if you're Trump. And that's the biggest problem with losing Pennsylvania. Your pathway to the presidency is not multiple pathways. There's not, many pathways to winning. No, there really is only one. You have to win through Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin. If you don't do that, mathematically speaking, you cannot win. You just can't. You might be able to win Nevada, but if you lose Wisconsin, it's over. And remember, all three of these states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, have voted the exact same in, the last 40 years? At the presidential level, they have voted the exact same since, I believe, 1988. So if two of them go Democrat, you would think, yeah, the third one probably will go Democrat as well. Again, it could happen where Trump could win Wisconsin, I get that, but that's the problem here. Instead of having thousands of pathways to winning, in this scenario, you have to win everything. You have to run the table everywhere. And at that point, I think Harris is the favorite, because if you lose a single state if you're Trump, not just, he can afford to lose Wisconsin but still win somewhere else. No, he cannot lose any of these states except Nevada. Because if he does, mathematically speaking, Harris at above 270. So Pennsylvania, just on paper, it makes the most sense why it's a must-win state. Again, that doesn't mean Trump's going to for sure lose if he loses the state. But unlike Kamala Harris, I think Trump needs Pennsylvania. I really believe that. Because while, yes, Harris, if she loses Pennsylvania, it becomes very difficult for her to win. But you could maybe argue with Pennsylvania, Biden had home field advantage. Maybe that's boosted his support a little bit in Pennsylvania by a couple points. Without Joe Biden on the ballot, maybe that caused a weird swing in Pennsylvania but that doesn't apply to Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. Even then, Trump could theoretically win Wisconsin, but he could still lose. So Harris, if she wins it, I really think she's got the presidency. But if she loses it, well, it becomes very difficult. But I think it's much more plausible that this happens than, oh yeah, Trump is able to run the table everywhere else. I just don't think it's going to happen. That's the biggest problem for Trump. If he loses Pennsylvania, he's done. Now, I do want to discuss the current state of the race in Pennsylvania because it is obvious it's a must-win state for Trump. He cannot lose it. If he does, he probably doesn't win. Now, back in 2020, Biden won by just over a point. Yeah, just by a point. Not by 5, not by 6. No, he won by a point. I mean, 80,000 votes separated Trump and Biden. And remember, Joe Biden had home field advantage here on paper. Like, he's Scranton Joe. Remember that? That's why I believe he was able to win Pennsylvania. This was effectively his home state. Now people don't believe that, obviously, and frankly, he's not even on the ballot anymore. But back in 2020, he had home field advantage in Pennsylvania. He just did. And you could argue that's the reason he won Pennsylvania. Like, look at Lackawanna, look at Monroe. This is Scranton. This part of the state is Scranton, Pennsylvania. They shifted several points Democrat. And yeah, only 5 points here, 2.5 points here, 5 here, 5 here. But they add up. These counties all add up, and you realize immediately, oh, wait a minute. Virtually all of Biden's margin of victory came from improvements in northeastern Pennsylvania. If it wasn't for this, there's a chance he could still win because of improvements in places like Chester and, Lancaster. I get that. Even Pittsburgh. But you cannot deny that Biden ran it up in this part of the state. And that's more than likely because he's from this area on paper. Like, oh yeah, he's Scranton Joe. He's from Pennsylvania. That's why I think he won PA at the end of the day. He won it because of improvements in not just northeastern PA, but eastern PA as a whole, outside of Philly. But the biggest shifts came mostly in the Scranton area. Well, now you don't have Joe on the ballot. I mean, they threw him off the back of the train. He's not going to be running for president. Now you have Kamala Harris versus Trump. And this is just a simple question. Like, this is just such a common sense thing. Do people really believe that Kamala Harris has the same appeal to these voters that Joe Biden did? The exact same appeal, because these are ancestral Democrats. These are Democrats from 30 years ago that in recent years have been trending Republican, white working class, blue collar voters. Do people really believe that Kamala Harris we're not talking about, Joe Biden who had the fake Scranton appeal. You're talking about someone from California, a West Coast liberal on the top of the ticket. Do you really think she can appeal to voters in Lackawanna, Monroe, even Northampton? Do people really believe that? And that's the biggest problem for Harris. I really believe she has no appeal to these voters whatsoever. And not just that, Western PA, which again, Biden did several points better in Allegheny, even Erie County, in places like Butler, Westmoreland, etc. But again, these are ancestral Democrat counties. These counties voted for like Al Gore and John Kerry, for crying out loud. Hell, some of them voted for Obama, I believe. So, do you really believe that Joe Biden was not able to win these people back? Like some voters, yeah, but outside of, places like Butler, he did in fact even worse than Clinton did in places like Lawrence and Clarion. But do you really believe that Kamala Harris has more appeal to blue-collar voters that most of them were Democrats just 10 years ago than Joe Biden did, especially in Pennsylvania? Really? If you have to rely on Kamala Harris for white working class appeal, you're screwed. Because she has none. This idea that she's gonna magically do better than Joe in places like Scranton, Erie, even Pittsburgh, maybe in the suburbs, maybe. But do you think the average blue-collar voter in Bucks County or even Philly, do you believe those voters who they might have voted for Joe back in 2020, do you think they're going to vote for Harris? No, they're not going to. They may not vote for Trump, but they're certainly not going to vote for Harris. The problems just keep adding up for Harris. Demographically speaking, this is a state that should go for Trump by like 5 points at the bare minimum. It should. And as of now, in the RCP average, Trump's up by 0.1%. Now, when they add insider advantage and eventually get rid of this New York Times poll, it's probably going to be like Trump +1. He is pulling the best in Pennsylvania of the 3 Rust Belt states, just like he did back in 2020. So if Trump is up in Pennsylvania, well, go back to the map here. If we assume Trump is up in Pennsylvania, again, this is a hypothetical, if he's winning there, well, he just needs Georgia, and he's at 270. But even without Georgia, well, Trump's pathway to winning is fairly simple. Just win Wisconsin, which I believe there's going to be a big polling miss yet again there, and Nevada, which oddly enough is actually like Trump +2 in the RCP average, despite some wonky polls having him down by 3 or 4. This is much more simpler than, oh yeah, by the way, Trump cannot afford to lose Wisconsin. If he does, it's over. Here it's, no, he can afford to lose even Georgia. He can afford to lose Michigan. Now, he can't afford to lose, actually, he can afford to lose Wisconsin. It's a weird scenario, but it's entirely possible. He just needs Arizona at that point, or vice versa. You see why Pennsylvania is so critical? It opens up so many pathways that are just simple. Much more easier than, oh yeah, you're down for sure in, let's just go back to this map. You're down in Pennsylvania, you're down in Georgia, or Michigan, I should say. Yeah, you have to run the table everywhere. Outside of Nevada, you have to win everything. And we're assuming Wisconsin votes Republican. If it doesn't, well, with Nebraska second, that's 270. Pennsylvania is just critical. It has been critical in recent years, I get it. But this time around, I believe it's a must-win state for Trump. The Trump campaign should throw everything at the state. Not just invest some resources. I would argue, throw everything you possibly can at Pennsylvania and Georgia. And of course, invest into other states, but mainly those 2. That's your easiest pathway to winning. And quite frankly, it's just common sense. Like, of course, you want to put everything you can into Pennsylvania, the one state that has the most electoral votes, the state that if you win, you're probably already winning Wisconsin. So already, you're probably at 264. And at that point, you can win anything. You just need one more state, and you've won. Whether it's Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan. In this scenario, you've won. You can lose everything else, just a very simple pathway. It opens up so many more pathways than just, oh yeah, we lose Pennsylvania, we're already down in Michigan, but we can run the table with everything else. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.